in my view, on annual basis should make sense.
For our online audience, can you please confirm to us if you can hear us? Just as we can also see that you are already in the meeting, can you please confirm to us if you can hear us? Maybe by just stating in your chat box. Yes, we can. Let's see that come up. Okay, great. So, just by way of a quick information on why we have convened this particular conversation, Parliamentary Network Africa, which is the convener and connector of civil society organizations that works with parliaments, legislatures, national assemblies across the continent, is implementing a project called the Open Parliament Engagement and Networking in West Africa, which is abbreviated as Open West Africa Project. And this Open West Africa Project has components, including creating opportunities for civil society organizations to be able to learn and share best practices, to be able to identify some of the good things that they'll be able to implement even as they work with various national assemblies, various parliaments. And of course, more importantly, to be able to access knowledge materials that will help them better work with their respective national assemblies. As part of this Open West Africa project, we are presently stationed in Monrovia in Liberia, where the first part of a two-part training on parliamentary advocacy, understanding how parliament work and opportunities to engage, has commenced. Now, this training is having this first part take place today, while the second part of the same on the same topic will take place on Tuesday, 21st of September at the same time, 1:30 GMT. And we expect that all of us, both physically here in Monrovia and those of us who have joined online, will be able to join us on that day, the 21st of September, to take the second part of close on this learning journey on understanding how parliaments work and opportunities to engage. This is an abridged version of a full course that is run jointly by Parliamentary Network Africa and the West Africa Civil Society WACS as a 5-day physical in-country training for civil society organizations across West Africa on parliamentary advocacy, of course, led by the West Africa Civil Society Institute. And as part of this, we're giving some highlights on this particular course, and it's our hope that for many of us, it will spur us on to want to take the full course when it's later announced sometime in the future. To be able to facilitate this afternoon's session is somebody who has worked with the West Africa Civil Society for many, many years. She is, of course, revered as a major player on matters relating to advocacy, capacity building in that particular area, and issues related to policy influencing on continent, particularly within the West Africa region. She is presently the head of policy influencing and advocacy units of the West Africa Civil Society, WACS, where, like I indicated, she has been working for a very long time now. So without much ado, I present to you our facilitator who will lead us through the first part of this training, of course, focusing heavily on the advocacy side of parliamentary advocacy, which is a major area of it. Omolara Balogun. Omolara, welcome.
Thank you, Samuel. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, colleagues. Trying to switch on my video. I hope it works. Hello, everyone. Hi, it's Monrovia. Good to see everyone again. Thank you so much, Samuel. Thank you.
Very well. So, Lara, like I indicated from the very beginning, we are start our training right away. The audience in Monrovia are already seated. Our audience from far and near have also been able to join us virtually. So we are in your hands. I hope you are doing well and good in Accra, in Lagos, in Abuja. Where are you?
Well, everything is fine, Samuel. Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure for me to join this training section this afternoon. It's been a while. I haven't been to Monrovia this year, and it used to be a very, great place for me to visit. I mean, for so many years, we have a number of partners there and friends, actually. So good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Omolara Balogun, and I work with the West Africa Civil Society Institute as the head of policy influencing and advocacy. I just want to be sure you can hear me clearly. If you can you just wave your hands wherever you're seated? Excellent. Oh, thank you so much. Excellent. I'm happy that you can hear me. So I'm sure a number of you may be familiar with the West Africa Civil Society Institute and the work that we do. So we are a capacity building or capacity strengthening organizations for civil society across West Africa, plus Cameroon, Chad, and Mauritania. And what we do is to provide capacity support to different groups of CSOs working on diverse thematic areas. So irrespective of the theme that you're working on, be it gender, climate change, governance, democracy, elections, child's rights, water and sanitation, whatever it is that you're working on, we are here to provide technical support to ensure that your organizations are stronger, you have systems, strong systems in place, you have the technical capacities to deliver on your various mandates, and a lot more. We do a lot of convening, advocacy, training, policy dialogue, some of which I believe some of you may have been a part in the past, and maybe even this moment. So it's really a pleasure to be here with you today. Like Sam said, this is like they call it the tip of the iceberg, like we are not going to get to the cake today. It's really impossible to do so in an hour or an hour and a half, thereabout, but definitely we will try as much as possible to have a taste of the icing. Let's have a taste of the icing. We're going to be talking about advocacy and parliamentary systems. How can we engage as advocates? How can we engage the parliament as advocates? What are the opportunities that are there? How do we, put ourselves together to engage effectively and efficiently? It's really painful as a trainer not to be able to meet the participants, but I want to believe from the picture I'm seeing, I believe you are all must be executives and programs manager and all of that. So I really want it to be a bit interactive, despite the gap that physical challenges is bringing to us now. But I want it to be interactive. So before I start, the first question I want to ask, and you can just signify by a wave of hand, is how many people are actually in charge of advocacy for their organization? if you are in charge of advocacy work for your organization. So I see like 2 hands there. I see like 2 hands there. Okay, that's fine. And how many of us have actually interacted with the parliament before? Now, you don't have to be an advocacy person or advocacy manager or officer for your organization, but you've had an experience to engage the parliament before. I see a lot more hands. Okay, I see a lot more hands. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. And maybe the last question I want to ask is, how many of us right in this room have successfully influenced parliament? I mean, you took something to parliament, be it an idea, a bill, and it sailed through. How many of us have been part of a group that did that, or you led a group to do that? Okay, I'm not saying it. Okay, I can see 1, 2, and 3. Excellent. Okay, and I don't know I don't know if we have access to microphone, but the question I want to ask to the last 3 hands I saw, those who have been, in the the engagement itself, I want you to just share briefly how it felt, or how you felt when whatever you took to the parliament sailed through, just for 1 or 2 minutes. How exactly did you feel, or the team you work with, how did you feel then? So I'm not sure if I can hear. Sam, I don't know what the connection is on the ground, but I would like somebody to share.
Yeah, I can thank you. So we work with a civil society organization that meant the budget law. That was almost like a 20 different organization. And then we built a very good network within the legislature, and at the end of the day, we had this budget law, and that was one good.
Thank you so much. That's a good one. I mean, I have a bit of experience dealing with CSOs on the ground in Monrovia. But I mean, let's get started, because I think we have like an hour or less. Can you see my screen?
Not yet, Lara.
Not yet. Okay, just a moment.
I just also indicate to you that there are some of the participants also who are online, and so they are not in the room, so they are not left out.
Oh, excellent. So we are many. That's good. Nice to meet you all. So I would expect that those who are joining online can, use the chat box, as much as possible. I would really appreciate that, so that I don't feel alone in this virtual world, So if you are online with me, can you give me a thumbs up? Let me see your thumbs up. Just click it. It should be beside the chat box. Can you give me a thumbs up if you have access to it? Because I think the setting is a bit straight. Okay, I'm not sure I can see that. Well, oh yes, excellent. I see 2 people raised their hands. Excellent. Thomas, Conte, thank you for raising your hands. Yeah, I can see that. Okay, yeah, I see 3 people raised their hands. Thank you so much. So let's make use of this 1 hour to just have a chat about what advocacy is all about. How does it connect to the parliament? How can we engage the parliament? How do we engage the parliament? What opportunities are there? And all of that. So again, this is me, Omolara. I don't know if I've met 1 or 2 people in the room, but if I've met you before, you can wave your hand. So I want to feel familiar. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands there, but that's fine. Sam, you should have raised your hand. You've met me. All right, thank you. So we'll go briefly over, we talk a bit about advocacy, a bit of introduction to policy making processes, which is the sole prerogative of parliament. They make laws, they see to ensure that the laws are implemented, enforced, complied, and with, and all of that. And then we talk a bit about how we as civil society actors, as social activists, human rights defenders, what else are we, advocates, how can we engage this gigantic institution that is, critical institution within our government apparatus, if you get what I mean. How can we engage this institution that plays such an important role, like making the laws that all of us has to comply with? How do we be part of that process? And how do we ensure that the constituencies that we represent from the women constituency, the children, the youth, and so on and so forth, how do we ensure that their interest is captured in the work that these institutions and the actors within it are doing? How do we ensure that they are not, that we are parts of the process? How do we ensure that the process is inclusive the way we want it? How do we engage the parliamentary institution or the parliament as we saw it? So I think it's important because we are at the bone of this conversation rests on advocacy. How do we permeate through the system? How do we advocate? And it's important that we collectively are able to define what we mean by advocacy. In some quarters, advocacy could simply be protest. I've been with a group of people and they tell you they've done a lot of advocacy, and by the time that they share their experience or experiences with you, they've just protested, and that's it, and that advocacy. Advocacy is much more than that. So I think I'm going to rely mainly on the participants online. If one or two people, or if every one of you can just type for me what comes to your mind when you hear the word advocacy. And if one or two people can use the mic in the room as well, because I want this to be engaging. That is me. Our training has to be engaging. So when you hear advocacy, what do you think we are talking about? A word or a short phrase? I'd like to see the chat box. Okay. I'm not seeing anybody saying anything. Anyone in the room want to say a word or two?
Yes, so I'm the Bob Joseph from RX, Institute for Research and Democratic Development. When we talk about advocacy, we talk about raising awareness, taking up issues and raising awareness.
Thank you so much. It's about raising awareness. I hear another person want to speak. Maybe last person.
It's about demanding what rightfully yours.
It's about
demanding what is rightfully yours.
Demanding what is rightfully yours. Thank you so much. And online, I see Solomon saying it's lobbying. Advocacy, it's about lobbying. Advocacy is about giving voices to the voiceless. It's about policy influencing. Thank you so much, Thomas. Fredlin says it's lobbying, it's interacting to change an unfavorable situation and to influence action. I think with this few points I've collected from those online and those on site, I think I'm fine. Like we are on course. We are not mistaken at all. So when we're talking about advocacy, before we even get to the parliamentary aspect of things, we are talking about, a deliberate process that includes a lot of things, that includes a lot of activities. It goes beyond just protest. It goes beyond just research. It goes beyond just, speaking for. It has a lot more nuances. It has a lot more details within it. Advocacy is broad, but one thing that we have to be, convinced about is that it is a deliberate process. It is not something that you chance on. You want to influence the parliament, you want to engage the parliament, it has to be a deliberate decision. You do not chance on it because you're going to use advocacy. So it's a call for change. So that means that something as it is now, it's unfavorable. I think it was Thomas that made that point, and you want it to be different. So advocacy in its very, very minor form is seeking for change. It's seeking for something different. Advocacy, before you can do change, before you can make change or whatever, advocacy is a lot about research. If you don't do research, you may not even find out that thing that needs the change. So it's about research. And your initial research is not enough. You need to analyze. Everything about advocacy is about research and analysis, without which you cannot get those pertinent evidences that you want to use to engage whoever, be it policymakers, be it your MPs, be it even your peers or the constituency that you represent. It's a lot about analysis, about researching. Advocacy speaks to a lot of mobilization. You're going to mobilize support. And I'm sure as we go on, I will expect one or two people to share with us how you have mobilized your constituency to support your advocacy agenda. You cannot do it alone. No matter how powerful you are, no matter how rich your organization, no matter the size of your grant from wherever it's coming from, your organization alone cannot do advocacy. No matter how loud your voice is as an individual, you cannot do advocacy alone. You could start it, but advocacy needs support. That is, support is the oxygen for advocacy. You need support to sustain it. It's about networking and coalition building. Also, advocacy relies a lot on people. We call it the game of number. You need the number to make your advocacy to be effective. Because let's be very frank, your policymakers, your members of parliament, even the executives, as it were, they receive a lot of requests from families, from friends, from their own constituency, the districts which they have emanated from. They receive requests from young, from old. They receive requests from your colleagues working in water and sanitation. They are receiving the same requests from the gender people, the same requests from those working on children. They are receiving the same requests on those democracy and election. The request comes every day. So they receive a lot of requests from a lot of people. So how do you mobilize your own people, your own voices and resources to achieve the change that will define advocacy to seek? So it's about mobilizing people, resources, and voices. It's all a lot about strategies. Advocacy, you know, I said earlier that you do not chance on advocacy. It's not something you chance on. It's something you deliberately plan and then you execute. So how do you deploy strategy? What tactics are you going to school? All of these are elements. There are different levels of activities that happens within an advocacy. And most importantly, it's about evidences. You need to provide evidence before anybody can even agree with you that a situation requires change. You need evidences. As an advocate, if you don't have evidences, you're like a generator that has no fuel in it. You're just making empty noise. However, if you come forth with evidences, your noise may even be minimal. And if you have to make a lot of noise, then it's going to be louder and your impact is going to be higher. It's about moving to action. You don't just make noise. You don't just provide evidences. You don't mobilize resources, voices, and people for nothing. You are getting someone to act. And until that is done, you have actually not done advocacy. At this point, do I have any hands, be it online or on site, that want to say something? Maybe a question, or if you think I should move on, can you just wave your hand when you're seated? If I can continue, wave your hand for me. Are we fine? Can I continue? Nobody's okay. I see 2, 3 people. I want everybody to wave their hand if you want me to continue. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, thanks to those online who are raising their hands as well. So there is always a purpose for doing advocacy. You cannot do advocacy in vacuum. Be you engaging the parliament in your advocacy, be you engaging your constituency or engaging duty bearers, any kind of duty bearers at all, there must be a goal, there must be a reason, there must be an aim why this particular advocacy is happening. And these are just a few points I put together. You don't do advocacy in vacuum, like I said. You can do advocacy simply to call attention to an issue. You may just be using the call that you're making, just for somebody to know something is happening. And we're going to speak more about the third point, which is about influencing policy making, which is the sole prerogative of our parliament. It's about, you can use advocacy to influence policymakers in the act of policy making and how they implement the various policies that they come up with on our behalf. You can use advocacy to promote issues. I mean, gone were the days where the issue of gender hasn't taken much of a center stage as it has now. But today we have so many people speaking about gender, speaking about poverty, speaking about child's rights, speaking about the vulnerables, speaking about those who are differently abled, and all of that. So we have used advocacy to promote different kinds of issues. You use advocacy to facilitate social justice, especially if you're a social advocate like myself. You can simply use advocacy to inform. When you do that research and you collect those data and you put them in infographics and you share it on social media, or you put it in a leaflet or in a brief, you are educating someone. When you do awareness creation, from the word awareness, you're educating someone. When you do sensitization, which are all, key elements of advocacy, you are educating someone. So you could be using your advocacy to simply educate, to simply inform. And the last point I have here is that you can use it to mobilize people to push for a much more inclusive, participatory, and progressive democracy. Which is what we all aim for in our respective countries. I'm looking at the chat box. If you want to say something, please go ahead. Just like I said, we're just going to pick, I try picking here and there because we can't go through the full spectrum of this training because we don't have time. So basically, whatever advocacy you do, we go through the circle I have on my screen now. Advocacy is always activated by a problem. You must identify a problem that you seek to change, or you seek for people to know about, or you want to influence. So it's always begin with a problem, something that is not normal, a social ill, social problem. It could be as simple as you seeing kids on the streets during school hours in the morning. It could be as simple as you having a dangerous gutter behind your house that could easily, kill someone. It could be as simple as you have detected that certain money allocated by government is not being used in your constituency. You have seen a problem that you don't want to keep quiet about. That is the beginning of advocacy. And that is why advocates, I don't know who speak more, whether advocates or the media guys, but you are always speaking out against something that is abnormal. When you identify that abnormality, you gather information about it. This is where you do a lot of research. Does it look like a problem or is actually a problem? It's research, more information that would help you to sharpen that, to be sure, is it a problem? Is it temporary? Is it a permanent problem? Who has been affected by this problem? Can you gather some evidence? All of this you do in number 2, gathering information. And when you gather your information, you want to make a decision. Which one are we pushing? There are times when you do your research, you see the different tentacles of this problem. What we advise people is that make sure you don't have more than 2 goals for a particular advocacy you're running, so that you can track it, you can monitor it, you can evaluate it. Then you have to plan. This is where you plan what resources are you going to need, what strategies are you going to deploy, who are your stakeholders, who can help you, which parliamentary select committee is in charge of such a case, and so on and so forth. And then you begin to act, you take action, and then you evaluate. This is the simplest form of an advocacy plan or cycle I could come up with, so that we can at least touch on it before we move on. Any comments thus far? Are we together? If we're together in the house, can you wave your hand? I need to see you with me. Just wave your hand. Okay, thank you, Thomas. Thank you so much for raising your hand. Thomas is joining us online. Thank you so much for raising your hand. And for those listening in French, I hope I'm not too fast. If you are online and you're listening in French, can you raise your hand or give me a thumbs up if the tempo is okay? Sometimes we get so passionate about this thing that we speak so fast. And Sam, you can also let me know since you're on the ground. All right, thank you.
All right, so there is a hand up in the room for a question.
All right, I'm happy to take that. I'm happy to take that. So please.
So thank you so far for the presentation of this book. So now concern is what is that you are moving fast and you cannot grasp everything that you're saying. Is it possible for you to send us your presentation?
Absolutely, you're going to have the presentation. That's not a problem at all. I want to be kind to the interpreters because if I speak so fast, then because it's simultaneous, it becomes a problem. So, c'est bon?
C'est bon.
Oh, merci. Okay. All right, thank you so much. So you're going to have access to the presentation afterwards. It's not a problem at all. Thank you. So with that snippet on advocacy, can we now draw closer to our destination? So if the interpreters, can you mute your mic? You're giving me feedback. I can hear you. All right, thank you. So let's move closer to our destination, which is lawmaking process. The lawmakers, the lawmaking institutions, the parliament, the legislators as the case may be. How exactly are policy made? What does policymaking process looks like? What are the roles of policymakers? How can we influence the roles of policymakers? Where is our space as advocates? Where is our space as civil society actors in the policymaking cycle? At what point should we intervene? At what point should we contribute? Or can we even, contribute throughout the entire process? Let's have a look of what we have. So this is a typical policymaking process in, I would say, in a very sane climate. Where situated in a normal context, I do understand that around here on the continent, we could have a normal context, one time, 1 or 2 times. But in a very normal context, every policy that is made should go through these 6 steps. So let's look at the steps one after the other. Agenda setting, which is the first one. For agenda to be set, there has to be an issue at hand, whatever issue it is. So for those of you online, can you share with me issues that any issue you have worked on that had made it to the agenda, that made it to the policy makers' agenda? Chat box, anybody type in? Whatever issue at all, whatever issue you worked on that made it to the list of policymakers. Abolition of death penalty. Thank you, Solomon. Thank you, Solomon. Any other one? I'm coming to those in the room, but let's hear from those online first. Service Delivery Index on Health and Education. Fredley, thank you for sharing that. Any other one? Maybe one last one. One last one. What issue did you work on that made it to the agenda, to policymakers' agenda? There are times you work on a lot of advocacy and nobody's seeing you. Okay, so let me go to the room. 2 people. What advocacy issue have you worked on that made it to the parliament, that became a discussion in the parliament? Maybe it didn't get to the reading, but at least it was stated. Can somebody share with us in the room?
Yeah, so,
1 or 2.
Yeah, so to compose something once again, so AREC, along with some coalition of here to work on what we call a county social development bill, and we presented that to Parliament and that bill was passed on from the lower house to the upper house. Then the representative voted in favor of the bill. And the bill was actually seeking to make the issue of county development a priority. And so then there was allocation made to each county based on the budget law. But as we all are aware, the budget law is a fiscal instrument. And at the end of the fiscal year, the law elapses. So we were
Thank
saying,
you.
hey, it's not always good for the development of county to be at the will of the government. It should be by law. So we drafted the law, and the law was supported by the lower house. We have consultation throughout the country, and everybody got some input, and that law was drafted and sent to the parliament, as I said, and the law.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that detailed feedback. Thank you. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make here is the beginning of every policy making, the beginning of every work that is done in your parliament is when the agenda is set. And agenda setting starts from when a problem is identified and you're trying to bring it to the attention of policymakers, okay? And that is also the beginning of your own advocacy. Getting your issue to get attention, to attract the attention of policymaker in itself is a whole lot of advocacy success, because not all issues, make it that far. And the second one is when the policymakers begin to construct alternatives, i.e. they are trying to respond to the agenda you have brought forth. They are trying to find solutions to that problem, the problem that have been defined. And they are looking at what policy response is best to address this problem. And they begin to formulate. And that takes us to the third one. When all the alternatives they have created, they have established at the second stage, it's now before them, they need to make a decision. Which one are we going to take? Should we make it, let's say, for example, the agenda that got to their attention is that a lot of kids are on the streets during school hours. And some of the alternatives they can come up with could be, let's do free education. And it could be, we noticed that 70% of the kids are actually girls, so let's do free education for girls. And somebody can say, they are of certain age, let's do free education for kids between 5 and 10. These are 3 alternatives already. So when they get to number 3, the third stage, they want to make a decision. Choice of solution to the problem established in number 1. Here, this is where we have a lot of problems with our government. And I can tell you, if I was in government, this is where I'm going to have a lot of problems with you. Because sometimes as advocates, we do not understand the context in which we are operating. And due to no fault of ours, most of our context, many things are done in secrecy. We still have situation of people pushing for rights to information in various countries. We have been able to make, some progress in Ghana here. We don't have information on what government is doing. So because of that, we cannot even help, or it's difficult for both parties to agree on a choice of solution. And I'm going to speak more a bit about that, or when you eventually come for the full bouquet of the training that Sam mentioned, then we can go deeper into really understand how this thing plays out. How does it seem like we are always at loggerhead with each other, government, civil society, and all of that? Because we don't understand, we don't have information. And when the choice is made, which is usually based on a number of factors, government's capacity, the resources at their disposal, who is willing to partner with them, existing laws, and all of that, then it brings them to number 4, where they have to design the law itself. where they have to design the law that responds to the problem in number 1, okay? And then it goes to number 5, where they want to implement. This is where they tell you this law and this bill or this act or whatever has been made. This is the law. It's going to be implemented by Ministry of Gender or Ministry of Children and Education, since we are talking about kids not going to school. And then they put together certain line ministries that we implement. And then there's evaluation. Like I said, this is what happens in a normal context, in a sane context. Now you want to ask yourself, where exactly is our space as civil society? Can we limit ourselves to identifying problems in our society alone and bringing it to their attention, and ensuring that these problems make it to to government's agenda? Or can we contribute to alternatives formulation stage? Or can we even help government to make a choice? Can we follow them to design? All of this, let's look at how it works. Where's my click? Okay. So when problems are identified in very unlikely situation, which is very likely around here, you see policymakers going straight to come up with a law without engaging anybody. They just tell you, if your kids are found on the street between 8 o'clock and 2 p.m. when they're supposed to be in school, the mother is going to be arrested. And that is the law. And that is usually what could happen in an insane context. And civil society, there is totally no room for opinion polls, for public comment, for consultation. There is nothing. You identify a problem, government swings into action, to design something that just responds to the problem, okay? But here is what happened. For 2 and 3, it's when a government does not see the need for debate or contribution from citizens. When in actual fact, this is where we determine how the parliament will work. This is where we determine how fast, how quick, how effective and efficient the parliament will respond to the social problems, if you get what I mean, okay? But here, we usually do not have adequate time to, to contribute to section, to level 2 and level 3. And this is where we are supposed to be doing a lot of work more. And then when it comes to implementation, things are changing, I must admit, and I must share with you that now we have a whole lot more inclusive, a lot of governments are now using inclusive approach to policy implementation. They call on civil society, they call on development partners, at local and regional, even international levels to support the implementation. And you can see this around issues of climate change, around issues of gender. Is becoming a collective responsibility of everyone to ensure that whatever policy, be it at the international level, UN, AU, ECOWAS, or even at the local level, is implemented together. And as usual, we as civil society, we do a lot of evaluation. It is when we evaluate that we identify problems, and then we start the cycle again. So this is basically how it works, just so we don't spend much time on it. And for us to engage effectively with this process of lawmaking and to engage those who make this law, because as civil society, no matter how powerful you are, no matter the size of the grant you have, you cannot make law. It's not possible. You are not a lawmaker. Okay? So whether we like it or not, we need to find a way, creative, innovative way to ensure that we are in close collaboration with our lawmakers. So how do we do that? I'm sure we should have like 30 minutes more, and I'm going to run through the slides very quickly. How do you engage your parliament as civil society? 1, you must know that the institution you are engaging with is the one that has a lot of power. So how you communicate first determines how best you can engage. You must have what we call strategic communication. You cannot influence the parliament if you don't inform. How do you inform? You cannot inform if you don't have fact, if you don't have evidence, if the information you are bringing to the parliament is not useful to parliamentarians, if the information is not helping the parliamentarians, if the information is not easing the work that they are doing in the parliament. Okay, that is why you have to be strategic. The data you have collated in the field, the evidences you have put together, the analysis you have done has to inform a section of the parliament that is working on your issue, on your advocacy issue. And it's after that information is passed in a very strategic manner that you begin to persuade. And we're going to look at that. How do you persuade the parliament? How do you influence? That's basically what we're talking about. How do you influence? How do you ensure that the parliament's conversation, the discussion and decision is moved in the way that you desire? Because I want to believe that your desire is in the best interest of the Lords. And you just want the parliament to see things from your own perspective and move in that direction, okay? So how do we do that? How do we do that? Do we have any comments in the chat box? Sam, I will appreciate if you can let me know if I have something to attend to in the chat box or in the room as well. The picture I'm looking at is small, so I'm not seeing when someone is raising hand, but if you prompt me, I will really appreciate so that we can all learn from this process.
That's fine.
Thank you so much. The first thing you really want to do, which we don't do enough as civil society, because for someone like me, I've had a fair share of both worlds. I've engaged a lot with different policymakers, including the MPs and then the executives and all of that. And sometimes, honestly, I mean, to be honest with you, I believe if I sit in the parliament, I'm going to have most of the problem your current MPs are having with you. I'm going to have it. Because most time, for where we sit as civil society, we don't know beyond our noses. We need to know more. If you want to engage the people who are making the laws, you need to know much more than engaging even the executives. You need to do a lot of research. You need to know the issue. If your issue is on climate change, you need to know it back and forth, in and out, the details, the international dimension, the continental dimension, the ECOWAS dimension, the local dimension, so that when you are speaking, you're not speaking on the periphery. You are speaking because you know you're speaking from the known perspective. Most civil society who really are willing and passionate to engage, our knowledge is not deep. Okay, so you need to do a lot of research, generate a lot of data, provide accurate information on the issue, you know, and be a source of information to them. When they see you, you want to engage them, be that go-to person that, you know what, call Namote. Namote, we have that information that they need in the parliament. I know Namote is a very a key organization in Liberia. I'm not sure if they are in the group, you know, or you call, which organization can I remember again? I mean, there are a number of organizations in Liberia. It's been a while, I'm sorry. You know, let your organization or your person be that go-to person for the parliamentarians, for the MPs, that when they get to you, they will get the accurate information of what happened in that constituency yesterday, because they know you're on the ground. Okay, this is one thing. This is one thing that we need to do if we must engage and engage effectively. You need to understand power relations. Sometimes we engage without having, you know, that insight of what goes on in parliament, or the interrelation between different select committees, or even within the executives themselves. We need to understand power relation if you want to engage. If you want to engage parliament, within the parliament, there are power levels. You have the speaker, is it deputy speaker? You have the clerk of the house. You have different select committees and all of that. All these people wear different kind of power. Yes, he's from your constituency, but what power does he have? Does he have a power to shift things in your direction? Or should you be speaking to the deputy speaker instead, who is not from your constituency, if from a different region? It's not from, It's been a while, my goodness. It's not, I keep going, it's in Sierra Leone. What are the regions in Liberia again? I think it's Bangai. I need you to communicate with me. If anybody is online, you want to type, please remind me. Okay, so you need to understand the power relation. Facts are not enough. How can you use the facts to move the conversation and the decision into your own desired point? So you need to present your fact in a way that it lands in the hands of people that have the power. It's important. Building the power to make the change that is necessary. There are times you need to connect the power in-house. You know, we're talking about power dynamics. There are times you need to connect the power in-house, link one person to one person for your own benefit. You need to strengthen your allies. If you don't have an ally in the parliament, it is difficult for you to influence. Everybody want to deal with their friends. So it's important that you make friends there. The other point I have here, okay, power relation and the lobbying. I know in this part of the world, we don't take lobbying seriously. But I'm speaking, you know, as an advocate now who have, you know, gone between both words. You have to lobby. It's important. And lobbying has its own skills. It's a whole section in the training that Sam talked about. It's a form of advocacy in itself. It's a critical element in advocacy, especially if you are engaging legislators. You must know how to lobby, because most of the things that happens in the parliament, in the chambers, is decided by voting. No matter what you do, they will have to agree, and it usually ends with the yay have it. So how do you ensure that the yay are on your side? Or how do you ensure that the yay in the room are people who are well equipped with relevant information and they have the data to push, you know, their case in the parliament? So you need to engage elected officials to take a position that you believe is in the better, is good for the Lord. You have to engage in lobbying. Now we have different lobbying strategies, which time will not permit us to go into. But one point I put here is there are always people whose positions are clear in the parliament, and there are those whose positions are against your desired interest. At the same time, there are always those who have no position. Please ensure you lobby those who have no positions, because you have the understanding that the final decision will run on numbers, and that is democracy for you. The higher the number, the easier the decision. So you want the number on your side. So look at it, and that is why it's important for you to know the people. I guess that's the next point. You need to know the people. You need to know your MPs. You need to know those in that select committee on children's rights or children's education or on climate change. Whatever area of work you're doing, you need to know the people one-on-one, know their name, know the constituency they come from. In Nigeria, we say states and their local government. So you know them in and out, because you would have to engage them. And I don't know whether you've had this experience. If you are in a strange place and somebody calls your name, Omolara, your demeanor to that person changes, because it means this person knows me. You will even smile, even if you don't know the person, but hey, that's my name. That's exactly how it works. Know the relevant select committee on your issues. Provide evidences to this select committee, because when it's time to vote, they will be driven by the information you have provided to them. It's very important. I'm looking at the time and I want to move on. You need to engage the media. You want to.
There is a question in the room for you. Do you want to take that now, or you want to finish up?
Let me run through the slides and then I can pick the questions. I'm looking at the time because I also have another engagement. So let me run through the slides. Please keep the questions coming. We'll take everything. We'll take it all, and Sam will help me to take some of them. He's my boss, so I have to defer some to him. Okay? You need to engage the media. If you do all advocacy, which is it's not something that we advise, every advocacy, not even in this post-COVID world, where there are a lot of restrictions. We are all restrictions on movement, on engagement, and all of that. The media has become even most important in advocacy process. You need to engage the media because it is the media that will let you know, or that will help you to disseminate what the latest developments inside and outside the chambers. What are the latest developments? Do you need to re-strategize? Do you need more people to talk about it? Do you need more voices? The media will help you to project all this. And of course, the media also, have you noticed that, I mean, just one example I used to share. When you don't know camera is on you, there's a way you behave. It all be it normal and all of that. But the moment you know camera is on you, you change, I mean, you readjust yourself. That's exactly what media does to parliamentary engagement, because they can see the world is watching. I would say that's what media does to advocacy. Ensure you are in engagement with the media. Get media on board your case if you're going to engage the parliament, both traditional and new media features, let it be used. Build a story around your campaign, because a time comes in the journey that what we fly in the parliament is the story. And if you have been following a lot of parliamentary engagement themselves, even when they, as members, are raising or supporting a bill, they start with stories. There is always a power of a story, and there's nobody that keeps a story better than the media. So what information are you feeding the media? How are they crafting the story around your issue? And how is that influencing the parliament? I mean, all of this, we can speak more about them when we have a bit more time. This is another important element if you're going to engage the parliament. Build relationships. Build relationship with key players who have influence. We talked about power relations earlier. It's important. Make sure you are in relationship with key legislative staff. You may think, you know, I don't have business with the staff at the parliament. I'm going to deal with the select committee. The role the staffs at the parliament can play, the kind of doors they can open, the classified information they can share with you. Oh, I can't even, I mean, it can be undermined. It can be overstated, just to put it simply. So as an advocate, you cannot build enemies. You cannot ignore or neglect any character within that institution, right from the security to the secretaries, to special assistants of the MPs and you know, of the committee that you are engaging. You need to cut them. You need to know what is going on. You know, as civil society, you don't have access to all the sections in the parliament. We have closed sections, and these staff are often in the closed section because they take notes and all of that for the MPs. And those notes, it doesn't disappear in their head when they're out of the chambers. So they have to be your friend. You should make them friends. Broaden your constituent space as you're making friendship and you're building relationship within the institutions. Make sure outside the institution, your own very constituency, the civil society, the beneficiaries, those affected by the issue you are pushing, make sure your relationship with them is intact because you're going to need them. Let me go on. Use the right strategies. We can begin to talk about the different types of strategies here because we don't have time. But what is important is that make sure you're using appropriate strategy. Make sure your strategy is adequate. I advise people, ensure you go to the field with combinations of strategies. Do not go with one or two. Oh, this is what we are going to do when you get there. The context could change in a second. And the two strategies you took to the field could become irrelevant. What do you do? And it's an opportunity you have to seize. So make sure you have your bag full of different strategies and just pick it out as it requires. Make sure you use an effective one. What is effective for a gender issue may not be effective for, say, climate change. So you have to do what we call strategy analysis. That is a conversation for another forum. So it's a whole lot. So at this point, I can take questions. But before I go on, I think there's an aspect I left out in terms of opportunities. There are different opportunities that are open. Your context sometimes tells you what opportunities are there. But most importantly, when your issue makes it to the floor of the House, is the big opportunity for you to keep the momentum outside the House louder. That's one opportunity, and not all the issues will make it to the House, or will get the attention of the policymakers. And another opportunity I've seen also that we have used is when, for example, if you're working on democracy, for example, in Ghana, or I think internationally, we have Democracy Day, all those international commemorations. They are huge opportunity for you to, just hammer on the parliament to get things done and all of that, because usually government will always want to showcase to the world what they are doing in relations to that commemoration. And it's an opportunity also for you to take it on. And most importantly, when your parliamentarians call on you, when they rely on you for facts, for information, these are everlasting opportunities for you to influence, and it's important. I mean, it really works. At this point, I would like to take questions. I believe we have been able to have the icing on the cake. This is a 5-day conversation that I've been able to touch on. So Sam, I think we can open the floor for questions now.
All right, Omolara. Thank you so very, very much indeed. Yes, I issued a caveat from the very beginning that this is 5 straight full days of training and being boxed together into 2 separate 2-hour sessions. There was a hand in the room for a question, but before I go to that, I see that in the chat box, there are, okay,
I see Solomon made a comment. Thank you, Solomon. Solomon says, identify and use ambassadors. Exactly. Those passionate about the issue or directly affected by it. Excellent. That's good. But Francis said, très facile, petit, ami. So if I can have somebody important engage, yes.
Exactly. We're just reiterating your point, the fact that media engagement is very important. There's a need to still continue to build relations.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Yes, yes, thank you. Before utilizing strategy effective, yes. Okay, any question at this moment?
Yes, there's a question here in the room. Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. I think this is a good summary, 5 in an hour. But I just want to kind of ask a question on lobbying vis-a-vis corruption. When lobbying in the West is quite defined, and for example, people going, they are lobbyist organization, and these organizations take fees to do lobbying. And as advocates, on that side is called legal engagement. But when lobbying is done with our house, let me use the Liberian context, it's called brown envelopes, especially the undue influence, lobbying influence of the executive over the legislature is called the use of brown envelope, which is corruption. How do you juxtapose lobbying that uses price induction versus the lobbying of advocates, and all of those lobbyists can also be called advocates even if a price tag is placed on it? How do you consider that? Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Any other question? Can we take more?
So my is not a question.
We're passing on the microphone so the next person I can ask the question.
Okay.
So actually, mine is not a question, but is in line with the issue of the lobbying. So what we do, we identify influential lawmakers that will always call from time to time to help or push some agenda we will have it in the lower hall or in the upper hall. So yeah, we lobby with them by engagement, and we identify them first to be influential lawmakers, and then we engage them on the either daily or weekly basis to have our agenda pushed through. Yes, so that what we do, that was just a comment.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other question?
Yes, another question from me. In the earlier discussions that we held here in Monrovia, we and of course you reiterated it when you were making your presentation about misconstruing protests to be, no, I think this was the conversation.
Advocacy, yeah.
Misconstruing protests to be advocacy. Now we know that sometimes you try to advocate to your legislature, they wouldn't listen. You do it so many times, they wouldn't listen. Okay. Must we not protest when all of this is happening and nobody is listening? That's my question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So let me take these two questions. So if there are other hands, then we can take it afterward. Thank you so much for the question on bribery and lobbying, or corruption and lobbying. It always come up, and I would have been taken aback that how come they didn't ask here? So yes, lobbying and corruption, they go hand in hand in most cases, and especially in our minds as citizens and as people. But what we need to know is that while both lobbying and brand envelope seeks a favorable outcome of a situation or from a situation, the practice or the practices are quite distinct. The outcome may be the same. You want somebody to move in a certain direction, and you're giving brand envelope in one instance, which is corruption, and in the other instance, you are practicing lobbying. Okay, and I'm going to break it down. So with brand envelope, corruption or bribery, as the case may be, that is a clear effort to buy power. You are purchasing, you are buying, you are paying for it. You have not lobbied someone. You are merely making a transaction. There is buying and selling going on. And that is corruption, that is bribery. The outcome may be the same as that of a lobby, but the process is different. And for us as advocates or as lobbyists, we are key on the process. We are not looking at the outcome, because the outcome of a corrupt practice will lead to another issue and become a vicious cycle. That is a fact. Because if you buy the power today for 100 Liberian dollars, 100 liberty, as you call it, next week, when there's inflation, it will be higher. And next year, you will pay higher. But lobbying is the same. The process is clean, it's clear. And whilst the bribery and brand envelope, like I call it, whilst it is purchasing power, lobbying is influencing power. I think that is the simple distinction or clarity I can give, the simple explanation or response I can give to your question. Brand envelope is not lobbying. You are merely making a purchase. You are making a transaction. You are buying the power. You are buying the mind. You are buying the conscience. You are buying the decision. You are buying the vote of that person. But when you are lobbying with fact, with figures, with logic, with reason, you are influencing the person to see it in a different way, in a way that is better for the lot of the citizenry. So the outcome, like I said, may be the same. The person may still vote in that desired direction that you want, but the process you have gone through is not the same. So lobbying is organized. You know, it's influencing the power, influencing the conscience, influencing decisions. Brand envelope and corruption and bribery is simply buying. I hope I've answered your question. So it's a matter of process. It's a matter of ethics. It's a matter of professionalism. It's a matter of integrity. It's a matter of legitimacy. As civil society, how many MPs do we want to buy? Where are you going to record the budget you are spending on buying? No. Even your donor will not give you, and that's why most American donors will tell you this money cannot be used to lobby. We can't lie and all of that. So it's a whole lot of conversation in itself, but I hope I've been able to just establish the clear difference. It's based on the process. One process is simply buying and selling. The other is influencing the power, while the other one is buying the power. And Sam, yes, thank you so much for your question. We use all other strategies. So protest is one of advocacy tactics. It's not advocacy in itself. So the point I was trying to raise is that advocacy is much more than protest. It's much more than sensitization. It's much more than research and analysis. It's much more than mobilization or networking or coalition building. Advocacy is a process. It's big. But within that process, you have all these things in there. You have mobilization, you have protest, you have sensitization, research, you have all sorts of things. So don't ever, let anyone who tells you protest is advocacy go away. Make sure you correct the person. It's one way of doing advocacy. It's one of the tactics of advocacy. And protest is one specific tactics of confrontational advocacy strategy. So we have different strategies in advocacy, which I couldn't touch on today. One of those strategies is what we call confrontation, which is the very last advocacy strategy we advise people to use. After you must have used every other strategies and you have documented evidence of how it failed before you go on to confrontation. And within confrontation, you can protest, you can violence or peaceful, you can do hunger strike, you can, strike, the medical doctors can go on strike, shut down the system. All of these are confrontational, tactics under, all of these are tactics under confrontational strategy. But protest is not advocacy. It's one of the ways, one of the things you do in advocacy. So I hope I've been able to answer your questions as well. I see a long French. Now my French is très petite. This one, can I have an interpreter? Somebody says, okay, not somebody, Solomon says, corruption thrives because working conditions of service of our parliamentarians are deplorable and nothing to write home about parliamentarian was paid in Africa. That is not the same in Nigeria. So working conditions of the, have you been to Nigerian parliament before? Have you seen the payments, pay slip of Nigerian parliament? Is one of the highest paid in the world, higher than that of the Americans. So yeah, I do understand your point that yes, in so many small countries, the working situation could be worse, could not be so good and all of that. But in the same Africa, we have countries like Nigeria, we have countries like South Africa. And this thing still happens. They get a lot of take home. They have constituency allowance, wardrobe allowance, television allowance, radio allowance, food allowance, guest allowance. I'm not joking. You can Google these things. You are laughing at us, but this is the problem we find ourselves. They are well paid. Wardrobe allowance, the clothes you wear, the states change them for you. They have furniture allowance. If you bought computer last year, you buy another one this year because there's an allowance for it. When ideally the manufacturer of computer gives it 5 years. We have kitchen utensils allowance. So even the rich ones are corrupt. That's the point I'm trying to make. Thank you so much. Any other question? I'm trying to see as a moment, open question. Yes, any question?
Yeah.
There's a long French, a long sentence in French. Sam, if somebody can translate for me, that would be great.
Sentence is just one of the translators helping with some French summary of your.
Oh, excellent.
Yes, so that's not really a question.
Solomon also says that parliamentarians don't understand their roles. Lawmaking and review and providing oversight and usually make ambitious promises like building roads, market, and school. The point is, you see, we don't have time and space to really unpack our parliamentary woes on this continent. The point is, who are those even making it to your parliament? What is their pedigree? What is their interest? How did they get to the parliament? Somebody returns, even in countries like Nigeria and some other big one, somebody returns from Cambridge, he or she is the son or daughter of a big man, and the compensation for getting a 2-1 or for being successful in school is to go into the parliament. If you are not a people person, if you are not a governance person, you don't have business. We don't have business in how to govern people. No, do buying and selling. We have so many people who makes into the parliament because they are able to make their contribution, to give their contributions to their party. And the reward of financing the party is to have a senatorial seat or to have a parliamentary slot. That is it, because you are bankrolling an aspect of your party. So there are so many people in parliament that should not be in parliament, when in actual fact, parliament should be the closest, institution to the needs of the people, because they are supposed to be mobilized from the various local constituencies. A parliamentarian should be able to draw the graph, the streets of his constituency without being in the community. He should be able to draw it in London, because he knows it in and out. But these days, you have people who are completely detached from that constituency that they represent. You have people who have not been at home. It's raining here in Accra heavily, so I may have problems with internet, but we are fine for now. So, this is not the space and time to really begin. I hope we can have, opportunity to go deep, and then we strategize on how to chase some of these things. But you're very correct. Solomon, thank you for raising those interesting points. Any other comments, questions at this point?
Except to say, Lara, that I know that your passion about the things that are not going right in Nigeria is so deep. I know you can go on and on and on when it comes to not going right in your own home country. I think that the situation is not much different in many of the other places. And that's how come, such capacity buildings are needed, so that we can all, get to understand each other, get to understand how to navigate around some of these situations and to make things better for the people of our respective countries. In the room, I do not see any other question. In the chat box, I think you've exhausted issues that have actually come up. And I noticed from my, that by way of our timing also, we've been able to do justice. And we're just about 7 minutes to the top of the hour. So it's at this point that we want to end it on here for the first part. And just to be able to remind those of you who are online that this is only the first part of the capacity building, virtual capacity building on parliamentary advocacy, understanding how parliaments work and opportunities to engage. It has been with Omolara Balogun, the head of policy, influencing and advocacy at the West Africa Civil Society. Like Omolara indicated, like I also said from the very beginning, this is just an abridged version of a full 5-day course that is run at the West Africa Civil Society in Waxy. Omolara usually takes about 3 of the days. She has done 3 days presentation in 1.5 hours. So you can understand how she tried to summarize as much as possible. So yes, we need to give a very big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Right. And Omolara, you have done justice to that in a matter of an hour and a half. You are beginning to behave like God, who a day in his eyes are like 1,000 days. Thank you very much, Omolara. Just to announce to those of us who are online also that the second part will take place on Tuesday, the 21st of September. Tuesday, the 21st of September.
which will be a continuation of this topic on parliamentary advocacy, and I will be facilitating that on Tuesday. Those who will be in the room on that Tuesday will be our friends from Freetown in Sierra Leone, while our colleagues here in Nigeria will be joining us virtually to have a continuation of what we've been able to share with us. This is the point at which we will say bye-bye to those of you who are online, including Omolara. Please endure the Accra rains. We had our own share of the rain here in Monrovia this morning. I'm sure that after many, many years in that city, we are used to it by now.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I wish you the very best and see you some other time. Thank you, Sam. Goodbye.
Bye. All right, so at this point, those of you who are online, thank you very, very much. This is where we bring the online session to a close. We are grateful that you were able to join us, and we know that you will be able to link up using the same link that you received in your email as you registered to join on Tuesday. You can visit the PN Africa page on Twitter at PN Africa Watch, at PN Africa Watch for updates on this training. On Facebook, you can visit Parliamentary Network Africa on Facebook to connect with us so that you can learn more about subsequent trainings and capacity building that will be taking place. Thank you all very, very much for the online group. Enjoy the rest of your day.